Okay, so in this demonstration we're dealing with a partly taxable to a wholly non-taxable asset. So we just basically gave you a situation that can arise in that intro if you listen to it. So now we've got a particular example that will try to drive that point home. We've got a company called Ricky Ltd which bought a recording camera for 600,000 rands to use in their media offices. They generated 30% of taxable supplies and 70% of exempt supplies at that point in time. In the current year, they decided to transfer the camera equipment to be used in its entirety in their educational and research department. The open market value at that point was 900,000 rands. So now we see that this asset was a taxable supply that used to basically have like a taxable supply portion of 30%, but now suddenly it's no longer applied to, it's now suddenly been moved to an exempt supply in the form of education. So it's basically deemed to just likely or mainly look like it's been sold, you know. So it used to be 30%, now it's no longer 30%, it's basically deemed to be zero. So in this situation, SARS has a requirement that says, no, we spoke about that. We're going to want you to give us output VAT based on the open market value at that point when you had actually transferred the asset to be in the non-taxable supply department. That would have been the exempt supply department of education, basically. So at that point, we left to levy output VAT. So we levy output VAT based on 900,000 rands, which is the open market value, times the tax fraction of 115. SARS doesn't have to look at lower of no. They want the real thing. You know, they want VAT as they would have normally claimed output VAT. So the VAT at that point will likely be times 900,000 rands. So VAT that would have been recognized by SARS at that point would be 117,391 would have been payable to SARS. 391. This would have been the output VAT that would need to be payable over to SARS. But things are not in balance. It's not fair that SARS is getting this output VAT, you know, whereas we don't have anything to claim back. They're charging us on 100% of the actual asset. And SARS says, okay, we'll give you a relief of an input VAT. The relief will be based on the non-taxable supply portion of the asset immediately before change in use, times that fraction with the actual value that you'd get by having to weigh up your lower of adjusted cost or open market value, whichever one of those two is the lower. You apply your percentage of the value just before the actual percentage of non-taxable supply portion before you change the actual asset from what it was doing, and you can then apply your tax fraction and you can claim your VAT based on that. So in that situation, we're going to have a look at seeing how much percentage in terms of the non-taxable supply that we had for that asset before we changed its use. So it was 70% that we basically had before the actual change in use, 70%. So we can use that in our calculation. So it basically goes 70% times the lower of open market value or adjusted cost. So open market value, we'll write it over here at the top. Adjusted cost, we'll write it over here. You see. So the values that we have, open market value, I just worked it out, saw it to be 900,000 rands. And the adjusted cost portion would be the amount we bought the asset for, which was 600,000 in this instance. So therefore, this would make this value the appropriate value for our calculation, and we times that by the tax fraction of 15/115, and we should get a workable answer that should be our input VAT, which would be a relief for us, input VAT relief for us for having moved that asset in its entirety. So in that instance, we're going to say 70. Go with the tax fraction first. And divide 115 by one of those stupid calculators times 600,000. Give me that much times 70%. Give me that much. So our input VAT in our scenario will then equals to 54,783. So 54,783 would be our input VAT that we can claim versus the output VAT that SARS would have claimed, which was 117,319. So obviously there's no surprise there. SARS is better off in terms of what they claim. So whereas for us, we basically get in this portion, which is at least a bit of some relief, you know. So that's basically what we would do in a situation where the actual asset went from partly taxable supply to wholly non-taxable supply. And we'll come up with another situation where the asset now has been moved from wholly being non-taxable to suddenly from wholly being non-taxable to wholly being, from partly being non-taxable to wholly being taxable, basically. And we'll elaborate using the same example. We'll change one or two things and we'll drive that home as well.